Hello, 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 coaches and leaders. I have a dear colleague and friend of mine, Linda Rhyne, on, and we are going to talk about, first of all, do I say, is it Ryan or Ryn?
It's Rhyne. It sounds like
Oh,
rhyme, but it's with an N.
yes. And it almost spelled like that. That's
Yep.
so funny. Like we just call each other by our first names.
Yeah,
And
it's all good, friend.
isn't that funny? This is
Yeah.
great. Okay, so Linda Rhyne is on, and we're going to talk. She has created this an assessment. It's an assessment, and I've been poring over it, and I love it. And it's a coaching system assessment. Like anyone can take it. It's free. And when I heard you'd created this, I was like, yes, I want to talk about this. And it has like four kind of pillars, four elements that you assess. You can self-assess. Like, how is your coaching system going? I like to think of it as an ecosystem. Before we jump in, I want to welcome you to the show. First of all, I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah. Before we talk about this assessment, I want you to share with everyone what has been your journey in education, kind of where did you start and what do you do now?
Yep. So I've held various positions. I was in education. I've been in education for over 15 years. I've been an elementary school teacher, literacy leader at an elementary school. I've worked at the district level, supporting 29 schools, K through 12. Everything's always instruction. And now I'm an educational consultant and I work with schools and districts on instructional coaching and literacy support.
Yes, I love it. And the work you do is just beautiful. And I love that you have this assessment because, one of the things that I experience when I get brought in by a district is what they often say is what do you provide, right? And then I share the things I provide. And then there's this like interesting conversation around what they think they need. And often they'll often ask me questions and I'll say, hold on, before I answer your question, I have questions for you. Right.
Mhm.
And what you and I know, Linda, is we need to assess what is happening
That's
before we
right.
can provide helpful professional development. We haven't been in that system. We don't know what's happening. So, just like working with a student, right? You get a new student, you're not like, well, this is the ABC of what I do. No, you assess where they
Right.
are, right?
Yeah.
And provide what they need. And so I love that you've created this very free tool
Very free.
for folks to have. We'll put the link in the show notes, but you and I are going to talk about it today.
Awesome. Can't
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, all right, so let's jump in here. The tool, and I'm for those of you watching the YouTube, here is the tool. It's called Coaching System Assessment, and it has four, do you call them pillars? What are they? Four
Yeah, you
elements?
can call them pillars, elements. I mean, they're really
Okay.
just they're four key pieces, right,
Yeah.
of a systems puzzle.
Yeah.
That it's the way that I kind of think of like the categories under
Yeah.
which things fall in our systems.
Yeah. Love
Yeah.
it. So the four categories
Yeah,
are people, process, product, and culture.
that's
It was
right.
almost fully alliterative.
Let me tell
Almost.
you, I tried really
I'm
hard
sure you did.
to
I'm sure
find
you did.
another P, and
I'm
then we
sure
just
you did.
went PPPC. That's all we
Yep.
got.
Because what P word actually is accurate at the end of the day. Okay. Yeah, anyway,
That's
I
right.
love me some good alliteration,
I tried.
but
Three
it
P's and
didn't.
a C, friends. That's what
I
we got.
know. So we're going to talk about each of these, and I have some
Perfect.
questions for you.
Great.
So under each category on the assessment, by the way, I love the length of the assessment. There's like one, two, three. You kind of rate on this Likert scale from 1 to 5,
Hmm.
the kind of where you are for each of these statements. Each of the elements has between 7 and like 4 statements. I love this. Like someone could take this and complete this in 3 to 5 minutes
That's right.
if you're being
Every
thoughtful.
every section has indicators on one page.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there's not more than one page. And I like, gosh, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a big direction reader. I'm not like, let's sit down and pour over the like I skipped your directions. I'm like, I don't know, just show me the stuff. I'll figure it out. Usually this is how I do things. I skip the directions. I go with stuff. I get confused. I'm
Yep.
like, I'm not actually sure what to do. I have to go back to the directions. This is unfortunately the way my brain works.
Yeah.
And I just love, I was like, yes, this is so great. This is not like, and surveys, you can get like fatigue,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
And this is so great. I was like, this is just, I read through it in 5 minutes. I'm kind of a slow reader. And so anyway, yes, love the length, love the length. Okay. So
Perfect.
I want to talk about each of these elements, and let's start with
Yes.
people.
Yep.
So here's I starred my favorite statements.
Okay.
So I want to talk about those. Before I talk about, and I kind of have guessed. So I want to talk about which of the statements do people tend to rate the lowest, which is like the
Ooh.
most common, lowest rated statements. So let's talk about people. Which ones, or one, like maybe the bottom one or two, yeah, which ones tend to get rated the lowest?
So what's interesting is I think that folks that are taking this are finding that having a clear definition of a coaching role
Mm,
is actually like when they actually sit back and think about that and reflect on that indicator of whether or not it's clearly defined, that it actually ranks pretty low
mm-hmm,
for them.
mm-hmm,
And mostly because you like other people can't really say what you do, or it looks different
mm-hmm,
depending on who's in the role.
mm-hmm,
And so especially when you're looking at a system, right? Like you want to have some sort of shared definition and
mm-hmm,
approach and everything. So that's one that I find interesting.
mm-hmm.
Um, Interesting that we rank it low because it feels like a simple thing for us to do and like have
Right,
established as a baseline, right?
right, right.
I think another one is the one about coaches receiving feedback and support.
Mm-hmm,
That upon reflection, people realize like that many coaches are kind of left to their own devices to guide
mm-hmm,
what instructional coaching looks like in their
mm-hmm,
system.
mm-hmm.
Um, and then I think too the emotional support needs probably ranks low. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
Although,
let's read the statement here.
okay,
Where is
you
it?
want me to
Okay,
read it?
wait. Yeah, you read it. Oh, I see now.
Coaches are equipped to handle emotional support needs.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I'm actually glad that we're talking about this because I don't believe that instructional coaches should play therapist
No, I don't
at
either.
all. But
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's important that we have a certain level of emotional intelligence to be able to read the room
Mm-hmm.
and to interact with humans on a
For
human
sure.
level,
Yes.
which is really what I'm getting at there.
Yes.
Like we can recognize that we're not going to move forward with a coaching conversation if said person can't pull themselves together and stop crying, right? Like we're not going to get
Yeah,
anywhere
for
if we can't
sure.
recognize that. Yeah.
So I want to say a few things about that. One
Yeah.
is, yeah, that's actually one of the things I've been hearing lately towards the end of the school year, like coaches being like, help, like I don't know how to help my emotional teachers. Like I'm not their therapist. And actually there's a lot of like, I'm not their therapist. And when we are just like when we're working with children, we're not like, why are you upset? Stick your, you need to get over it and learn something, right? We embrace the whole child and we say, okay, children are a whole human being. Human beings have emotions, right? We help them process. And we don't consider ourselves child therapists, right?
Right.
And so being with and ushering someone through an emotion is not being someone's therapist. We're not digging into someone's past. And my human-centered approach, right, which is what
Right.
I do to coaching or with coaching, is not therapy. They're actually opposite, well, on the continuum. Anyway, there's a continuum and they are not on the same part of the continuum at all. Therapy is totally on one end and
Right.
human-centered coaching is different. And so I love how you said we need to develop our emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
because this isn't an option either. This is not an option for effectiveness. We don't like, I don't really want to deal with their emotions. If you want to be effective as a coach, this is not an option,
Right.
because the neurologically, the part of our brain that is our emotional center that gets triggered when we're stressed out or feeling threatened or unsafe in any way, the amygdala, that part does not speak logic. It does not
Right.
speak lesson planning. It does not speak
Right.
solution, being solution oriented. It doesn't speak that language. So when someone is feeling emotional, logic does not help. As a matter of fact, it enrages that part of the brain. It's angry. It's like,
Right.
you're not hearing me.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Right.
Yeah.
So to me, it's, have you worked on your skills in empathy to
Mhm.
be able to be a valuable partner to the person that you're working with,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And yes, we want to focus on instruction. Yes, we want to make change, but recognizing that humans bring emotions to their work, especially in education.
Mhm.
We have to be ready to, like you said, help somebody move through that so that we can start to focus on instruction and
Yeah.
instructional change.
We coach through folks' humanity and not around it.
That's right.
I love that. So I do the one that I thought might be rated the lowest
Yeah.
was the statement, others can explain the coach's role.
Yeah.
Now, if the coach can't explain the role, clearly other people couldn't either,
That's
right?
right.
Accurately. But I loved that statement. And it was like, oh, that's really good. That's really good.
Yeah.
Because even if at a school, even if the coach is clear about their role, does not mean others are clear about their role. And so I actually have
Right.
a question for you.
Yeah.
If a coach is filling this out,
Hmm.
how do they know if others are clear about their role?
That's a great question. So I always recommend that when people are interacting with this, the what I recommend as an approach to using this, beyond just simply taking it yourself, there is an opportunity to engage the people that you work with, whether it's a teacher focus group or inviting them to, experience some of these indicators and rate them, because everybody's a part of the system, right? You don't want to just not there isn't a single person that's interacting with this experience.
Mhm.
So I always encourage engaging people in focus groups, doing some kind of survey or conversations around what these indicators are asking of us.
Yeah.
And so that would be my recommendation for this indicator is, who are the others in
Mhm.
your system that you can ask? And I wouldn't ask them, do you agree with my definition? But I would instead ask them, like, well, how do you see my role? Like, what do you see me doing? Right. And if they come back and they say, like, well, I see you at lunch duty, and right, like you come to planning, and they describe all of these experiences that you're like, wait a minute, like none of that is coaching, right? That just tells you, like,
Yeah.
gosh, I think I'm spinning my wheels, I'm working really hard, I'm doing all the things all day, and
Mhm.
I might be missing the mark in terms of my
Mhm.
work.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. So not and it's there's a distinction between others should know my role, the shoulds.
That's
We're
right.
shooting everywhere and making a mess. There's a difference between they should know my role and actually if they do know the
Well,
role.
that's right, because their perception is their lived reality, right?
Exactly.
So while the feedback of hearing the answers to that may feel difficult,
Mhm.
it's also their lived experience, right? And
Mhm.
so it's a good reflection point to kind of ask ourselves, like, how are people seeing me show up in my work, right? And
Mhm.
is the work that I'm doing landing the way I
Yeah.
intend it to?
Yeah. I love this. Okay, great, great, great. All right, we're gonna move on to process, the next P. So there's one, two, three, four, five, six question or six, sorry, statements that you
Mhm.
rate. Which ones get rated the lowest here within process?
Oh, okay. So, this one's hard. I think one thing that certainly comes out lowest are probably the top two: having an onboarding process for new
Mhm.
coaches and
Mhm.
what a professional development plan is for coaches.
Uh-huh.
And the reason I say that is probably not because one doesn't exist,
Mhm.
but I sometimes, like with the Likert scale guidance, right under each of the numbers, for the PD plan, for example, like, are we asking our coaches to self-direct their professional development, right? And it
Mhm.
brings me back to the question I always ask, which is, who's coaching the coaches, right? Like,
Yeah,
who's
exactly.
helping us grow in this
Mhm.
profession?
Mhm.
right? Because everyone deserves a coach in
Yeah.
order to grow. And so if our process is minimal in terms of onboarding beyond just, again, like, does it go back to the shared definition? Is the coach
Mhm.
clear on the role and what the expectations are? Um, that can just be, it can make or break what happens with
Mhm.
someone who's serving in that role.
For sure. And I think, if there's coaches listening to this that are like, I don't have a professional development plan and I want one, right? To be proactive, go to your boss. Say, "Hey, I'd like to set some goals with you. I'd like to
Right.
have markers with that," right? And it's not like evaluative for my whatever, like for my
Mhm.
uh job, but it's like actually because I'm committed to growing.
That's right. And I think too, we don't have to think of it in how we've often traditionally thought of professional development, like where it's like, I'm going to go to my leader and ask them to send me to this, six
Mhm.
session thing or whatever. It doesn't have
Mhm.
to be that either. But we're having a collaborative group where you can
Mhm.
be doing some study in a PLC of coaches with
Mhm.
articles and books and things like that. Can also be really valuable.
Yep. Yep,
Yeah.
for sure. I love it.
Yeah.
The ones I thought I had a favorite one, actually, a favorite statement. They're really hard. They were very hard, but I think the ones that just struck me, I'm like, "Ooh, I love that this is here." The statement, "Coaching time is part of master
That's
schedules."
another low ranking
I
one.
have never any school I've been at, I've never seen that. It
Yeah,
being on a master schedule. When it's on a master schedule, it's important,
that's
right? Our
right.
it's clear what's important in schools and districts.
Yeah.
It's first of all, it's on the master schedule, right?
Yep.
It's talked about in meetings.
Yep.
That's what's important, by the way. What we talk about is what's important to us. If we talk about like the quality of milk in the in the
Right.
whatever cafeteria, that's important to us.
Right.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
thought that
that
was so
one,
interesting.
so I can explain why I put that one on there because time is the most talked about thing in
Mhm.
education, right? Because we don't
100%.
have we don't have enough of it. And so this also goes with the culture messaging, right? Of what we believe about having a coaching culture. And so for me, the proof is in the pudding, right? Like if you believe in coaching and you believe in developing a coaching culture and you want this to happen as a
Mhm.
gift to your educators for their professional growth, then you will also set aside time to allow for
Mhm.
that to happen. And when you
Yep.
don't, it sends a message that you're creating an opt-in culture where teachers have to give up and sacrifice some of their time. Coaches are scrambling to try to find time to support teachers, during which they're not in a state of mind where they're coming prepared or having time for it, right? And so I just find that this is a very tangible way to build a coaching culture in a system, is to really identify the pockets of time that you are giving
Mhm.
teachers to have time for coaching. It's the same thing with asking teachers to be responsive to data, right? Then
Mhm.
you will give them time to do
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
And if you're, to me, I've written about this before in my newsletter, right? Like with the idea, like our schedules reflect our priorities,
Yes.
right?
I love that
And
you just said that.
so if you're not including that as a part of your schedule, then you're sending the message, even if you think it or say it, you're sending the message that it's not a priority.
Yep. I love
Yeah.
that you just said that. That was yes. Yes. Okay. All right. So the next one I want to talk about is product.
Yes.
Which statements tend to be what can you actually kind of give a basic description? Because that was actually the one that I was like, I kind of had to do a little more reading around it. Like, what does product mean? Can you give
Yep.
a basic, yeah, kind of description of that?
So product was a little bit of me trying to force the alliteration here. I will admit.
The truth comes out.
Yes. So for me, the products is like, what are the products of our coaching system, right?
Mhm.
And so for the purposes here, it's like, okay, do we have outcomes that we're striving for? How are we measuring the success and the
Mm,
fruits of our labor, right? If we are not getting clear on what we're trying to do as a result of having a coach or a group of coaches, then we aren't really clear on what the coaches are doing, right?
mm,
Or they might just be, we might be hiring them because it sounds good and the research supports it.
Yeah.
But what are we really aiming to do? What are the
Yeah.
coaches helping us do as a system?
Mhm.
And so to me, that's a product
Mhm.
of coaching.
Mhm.
But also, what products are we kind of leaning on, right? Like, are we thinking about the feedback and inputs that we're getting
Mhm.
that are a part of our coaching system? So, identifying ways to measure our coaching impact in
Mhm.
various ways, both with the outputs, but also the inputs that we have from the people in the system.
Mhm. Yes. Okay, great. Like, what
Does
are
that help a little bit?
it totally does it. I mean, I just hear like outcomes, goals, the direction we're going in. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what product. Okay, cool. So which statements tend to be rated the lowest here?
So, Um, I don't know that they're rated the lowest, but I often get questions about having quantitative and
Mhm.
qualitative
Mhm.
data for
Yeah.
kind of measuring coaching impact. Um, and so when I think about qualitative data, right, to me, that's an opportunity for a coach to look at a time tracker or a coaching log, right, and ask themselves, like, have I matched the frequency of my coaching support to my tiered distribution? Does
Mhm.
my, am I doing the work? And is my day, if I look at my calendar over the course of the week, how much time is coaching
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
preparing for coaching, right? Involved in
Mhm.
that versus some of the extraneous responsibilities that we're often given, right? And
Mhm.
that gives us information
Mhm.
to decide whether we're being effective. And then the qualitative, right, it goes beyond, like, you have to know what you're measuring, right?
Mhm.
Like, yes, of course, teacher surveys are important. We want to know that we're having an impact. But what are you do beyond that? Like, it has to be, how are we measuring that we're seeing change
Mhm.
instructionally, right?
Mhm.
Like, are you seeing impact on student outcomes? Can you see a tangible connection between you showing up as a coach and seeing a change in student outcomes?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because that's ultimately what I think people are hiring instructional coaches for.
Mhm. Yeah, and I even think about like another qualitative marker could be like teacher engagement in coaching,
For
like
sure.
teachers that are totally disengaged in coaching and then shifting towards engaged. Like, I'm just thinking about another Likert scale in terms of like totally like a continuum, right?
Yeah.
Like, is a teacher like disengaged? Are they rebellious? Are they like, I'm not doing it, I'm taking it
Right.
down, right? Or are they, like, neutral? Like, it's fine, I'm passive, but I'm okay if you approach me." Are they assertive? Like, "I'm gonna go find the coach, and I'm gonna get some help, and I'm gonna" right?
Right.
So, like,
Right.
even just engagement within coaching, I
Yeah.
would, also say, would show growth,
Yep.
and movement.
Yeah.
Um,
That was one of our coaching goals with a group of coaches that I work with. We said teachers will engage in coaching cycles, right? And then we
yes.
talked about, like, what's our evidence of that?
Yes, and what
Yeah.
is engagement? Do you
Correct.
I know words are important to you. Yes,
Yeah.
so you define, like, what does engagement mean,
Right.
right? We assume
Right.
it
We
means the
actually,
same thing for
like, broke
everyone.
that down. We were like, okay, like, they're responsive to emails. They let us know, like, when a schedule change happens because they want to meet with us, right? They're
I
not just like
love
letting
that.
us show up. Yeah. So we really like took that goal and then we broke
Mhm,
down, like, what are our indicators that inform our actions as coaches, right? Like,
mhm, mhm,
they have to know our email and that we are their
mhm.
coach, right? Like,
Yeah,
we have to make sure that we're doing that first to,
right.
yeah.
When I was coaching teachers, I had a teacher that would not check her email, and every time I would email her and be like, I'm coming on Thursday, can't wait to see her." I'd send her multiple emails,
Yeah.
nothing, and I'd show up, and every time I'd show up, she'd be surprised. "Oh my gosh, I didn't know you were coming," and I'm like,
Right.
"Lady." So one day, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't wanna surprise you. Are you getting my emails?" And she's like, "I don't know." She did this whole like confusion as a source of
Right.
resistance, right? She was like always confused. And I was like, "Can we check your email together?" I swear. I was like, "Let's go check it together. Let me see if you're getting my emails." We sat down at her computer and there they were, all my emails
Right.
unread. I'm like, "There they are, right
Right.
there."
Right. That's a great coaching action right there, right?
Yeah,
Like
I was like, we're gonna check it together.
we
You know
can't
what I mean?
assume that the
I
message is
mean,
getting through. Yeah.
yeah, and in this moment, right, I'm being kind of humorous. I was not condescending. I just want everyone like
No, no, no.
I was
Yeah,
not
yeah.
treating her like a child. But it was really authentically like, we're going to do this together so that
Yeah,
we stop this behavior because it is getting in the way
for sure.
of coaching.
Yep.
The ones, let's see, I had a couple that I starred that I thought might be the lowest rated. One was the goal, the statement is the goals for the coaching program are clearly defined.
Yep.
And I think you touched on that too. Like often they are just are. They don't exist.
Right. Right.
Um, it's funny because schools set goals and like, the recommendation for alignment is set goals for coaching that align with the school improvement plan, with the
Exactly
school's
right.
goals, whatever the school's goals are, right? Usually they live in the school improvement plan.
Yep.
Yeah, align those. They should not be not aligned, actually, right? Like
Exactly.
let's get that aligned.
Right.
Um, oh, and the other one was teachers provide feedback on the coaching system.
Y'all,
Asking teachers.
if you are not asking, okay. So this is like, we're both like business owners, right? So like,
Yeah.
if we aren't asking people how we're doing,
Yeah.
we will not survive as a
Yeah.
business.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And the same is true for coaches. Like if you aren't asking someone, hey, how did that coaching experience go? This is actually something I encourage coaches to try with veteran teachers. Like I want to practice having a coaching session and I really would love your feedback on how I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's a great
Yeah.
way to practice with an experienced teacher.
Mhm.
Like you need to know how you're doing and whether
Mhm.
what you're doing and the approach you're using and the tools you're using, whether they matter.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why are we showing up? Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I
And
love it. Yeah.
it shouldn't be an end of year survey, friends.
Mhm.
Like it can even be an informal, like, hey, can you plus delta on this sticky note before I go? I won't look at it while you're here, right? But can you just like give me a plus and a
Yeah,
delta
while
about
they're in the
how this,
coaching conversation with you,
oh
right?
gosh, yeah,
Yeah.
don't send them the survey after in the email.
Yeah.
Like use your plan the 5 minutes as a part
Yes.
of your session and say, like, can you give me feedback on how things have been going?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, so important.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last one is culture.
Yeah.
Um, I love this. Like culture is what I consider like the ecosystem that all of this lives in.
Certainly
You and
does.
I were talking about plant analogies, like the fertile soil.
That's
Nothing
right.
like the process, the setting goals, the professional development plans. Nothing can grow if the soil isn't fertile. And my
That's right.
opinion is that culture is the fertile soil.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. These are
A
all
quick
impacted by the coaching culture. Yeah.
Exactly. And just a quick fertile soil question or a story that like you didn't ask for. When I lived in Tanzania, which is in East Africa, I was shocked. So when I moved there, I moved into this kind of like newly built home I lived on the school campus that I was teaching at. And all these homes were new. And so there was just like dirt in the front of the homes and they were still like planting things
Mhm.
to make them look homier. And so a gardener came around to plant and they literally, it looks like they stuck leaves in the ground. I was like, I don't know what they're doing. Do they think this is a plant? It was just like leaf, 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 sticking out of the ground. I'm like, I don't know what they're doing. Those leaves turned into plants. I have no idea how that happened in American soil. That does not
That's
happen.
right.
This soil was so nutrient rich. What looked like leaves, I have no idea what they were, flourished
That's
into these
amazing.
huge plants. It blew my mind. I just like didn't even know this existed. And
Right.
I think about that soil sometimes. I'm like, am I in Tanzanian soil or American soil? Like
Hey,
how
that's
fertile
right.
is it?
That's a great, a great reflection. I love that. It's true.
Okay. So which of these statements tend to get rated the lowest?
Okay. So, we can certainly talk about the confidentiality one for sure. I
Yep.
think
Yeah.
that
Read
that's
the statement.
okay. So it's coaches are expected to maintain teacher confidentiality and share only general information with leadership.
Hmm.
I mean, here's the thing, right? Like there should be no secrets.
Hmm.
So, coaches have to maintain a level of transparency with the person that they're supporting,
Hmm.
and be upfront about what they are sharing. Like, should be no secret that coaches report to the
Mhm.
leadership team, or the, if
Mhm.
you're in a school, the principal, right? Like
Mhm. Yep.
the principal, like they have to be involved in all of that feedback loop.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think it's important to maintain confidentiality as a coach, but also, recognize like a part of your job is to report to a leader. And
Mhm.
so you oftentimes will be asked to share information, right? And so being clear with a teacher about, well, I am gonna provide like a summary. Here's what I plan to say, right?
Mhm.
Here's
Yep.
the update on how things are going.
Mhm.
I think is perfectly okay to say. What I talked about here is that confidence is always maintained, right?
Mhm.
Is kind of on the higher end of the scale.
Mhm.
And so to me, that's comp like you're maintaining a level of transparency
Mhm.
and respecting the teacher's wishes. Like
Mhm.
sometimes they're going to vent and they're going to say something that they don't want to be publicly shared, gossiped about, right? And they
Mhm.
deserve our respect in
Mhm.
maintaining their confidence in that way.
For sure. And is that one of the lowest rated in your
I think
experience?
I think it can be a mixed bag,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
I think it depends on who takes it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, and who's kind of informing that,
Yeah, yeah.
I
No,
would say.
that makes
Yeah,
sense. I've definitely worked with school leader and coach teams where the school leader is like, "Tell me everything." And I'm like,
yeah,
"No." That
right.
doesn't have I've had to talk multiple I don't talk them off the ledge. It doesn't That's not a good analogy, but I've had to share with administrators like, "No, it doesn't work." They're like, "Just pop into this other teacher's classroom." I'm like, "I haven't met them." No.
Right.
This is
Exactly.
We're not just popping into people's classrooms. We're not
Right.
like
Yes.
really setting clear boundaries. And the way that I do that, I think sometimes people can get be unsure how to do that, especially with a boss,
Yep.
right? And the way that I do that is sharing what I'm committed to is
Hmm.
being highly effective with teachers. And the way
That's
that I
right.
do that is by holding confidentiality, building trust and relationships, right? Before I
Yep.
start coaching them, all of that.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah.
think that's key too, is like, do the coach and the leader have a shared understanding about how this is going to go and what information is going to be shared versus not?
Yep, I think that's a great conversation to have
Yeah.
when you're talking about the role, clarity
Yeah.
around role. I love that. All
All
right, let's see.
right.
The two lowest that I thought
Yeah.
were all stakeholders believe in the effectiveness of coaching support.
Uh-huh.
I don't know
That
why. I
is,
just like
it's,
even the idea that we would ask, right? Like, oh, let's actually ask the stakeholders if they think coaching's effective,
yep.
right? A lot of people being voluntold for coaching instead of choosing, right?
That's right.
Like all of that. So I
Well,
thought
and I
that would
think
have been lowest
that
low. Mhm.
probably reflects a punitive culture of coaching, right? You
Mhm. Yeah.
assign coaches punitively and say like, "Oh, you're a bad teacher, we're going to assign you a coach."
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
So like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's
right.
like whether stakeholders like believe in the effectiveness probably reflects that style of kind of coaching assignment, right?
Exactly, right, and
Yeah.
that goes back to culture. I love that that is a statement that's under culture.
Yeah.
And the other one I starred and underlined this is coaches remain focused on
Yeah, that's the
coaching
other
and
one.
instruction without additional duties assigned, such as covering classes.
Yep.
And some friends of mine call this the kitchen sink coach, right? Where everything
Yep.
just gets piled and dumped into the coaching, other duties as assigned. And it
Yep.
really impacts a coach's ability to be effective when they're asked to do all of these other duties
Yep.
instead of the thing they're hired to do.
Exactly. And I think part of that is when if you're in an opt-in coaching
Mhm,
culture, right?
mhm,
And coaches don't have enough people on their caseload, right? I
mhm,
think we sometimes find like, well, we have to give them something to do to fill their day. They shouldn't just be milling about, right?
mhm,
And I also acknowledge we are in the midst of some challenging times with
mhm,
classroom coverage, right? So that's not to say that coaches should never cover classrooms, but if they're playing substitute every single day, then they will not be able to be effective at
Yep.
supporting in a coaching role. And so to me, it's really asking ourselves to this is all about reflection, right? So it's really
mhm,
asking
yep.
ourselves to reflect on are we allowing our coaches to do the job we hired them to do?
Yeah.
Right. And one way to kind of easily measure this is to do a calendar audit
Mhm.
and ask coaches to really look at tracking their time for a week or 2 weeks and then reflecting on how much of that time is actually associated with a coaching cycle and teacher support. And that's a really helpful way to establish a baseline of where coaches currently are.
Mhm. I love that. Doing a calendar audit. That's super concrete. Those of you listening, do a calendar audit.
Do a
I've
calendar
actually
audit.
been thinking about doing that myself because at the end of the day, I started asking myself, like, do I feel satisfied with what I've done completed today?
Yep.
Do I, and and I'm like, and I literally think, what did I do today? And I'm often flying
Yep.
where I get lots of stuff done on the airplane. And so my brain like rewinding and being like, what did I do? It's also like, where was I when I did it?
Right. Yeah, for
um,
sure.
so I love that the calendar audit. And
Yes.
also I think part of doing that is also writing down that we're doing it, right? So if I say I have a teacher observation at 10 o'clock, but I don't do that teacher observation, I should take that off my calendar.
Right.
And instead, if I had to cover a class for 20 minutes for someone to do an IP meeting, put that in have your calendar be accurate,
Yes.
right? First to be able to do the audit.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I
Yep.
love that. Okay. This is such an amazing resource. I hope those of you listening, like want to download it because it's an amazing, it just really is a great resource. So feel free to head to the show notes to download it. Um, are there any big ahas, Linda, that you want to share before we finish up that people have after finishing this assessment?
Yeah, I think when you engage with this assessment, I think one thing that's really helpful is it's going to highlight some bright spots, right? So most of the times we are doing some things really well in our coaching systems. And
Mhm.
what we then discover is like there's just a handful of things that are causing a barrier to this really like taking off and being super effective. So I think that's something to take away. It's like this is not going to just like tell you like what like you're doing a terrible job in your coaching
Mhm.
system, but in fact, it's going to help you be able to celebrate all of the things that are already established and going well,
Mhm.
and then also give you some real clarity on how do you move forward, knowing where you
Mhm.
are.
Yeah, and a roadmap. Like,
That's
if we
right.
can establish where we are in our journey, then we can move forward, and this is the map to do that.
Yep. Got to know where you are to know where you're going.
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this incredible resource with
Thanks for
my
having me
listeners. I
and
really appreciate that.
spending time
And
on it.
if folks want to find out more about you and what you
Yep.
do, where can they find you?
Easiest place to go is to go to lindarhineconsulting.com.
Mhm, mhm,
And all the things are there. You know, the link to the resources there. You can find me on all the socials on the bottom of my page because I try to be everywhere. And so yeah, I would love to connect. It's just me behind all the things. So like you're gonna get me.
I love that. Well, thank you again for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you.